Hi, this is Ruth with Workamajig. Can you guys hear me? Yay! All right. I was just giving everyone a few minutes to get connected, so there was definitely some dead air right there. So I'm ready to do the May webinar for custom dashboards. And just so you know, in the May release, the big change that we made is they're now called graphs. So a couple of things to get out of the way before we get started. I do have a chat set up, so if there's some questions that come up during the call, you can certainly type those into the chat and ask them. I will try to get to as many questions as I can, but of course, if your questions, if you're looking for maybe a little bit more training than what the webinar provided, or if you're looking for some more in-depth questions about these graphs and charts, you can always email support@workamajig.com, and your account manager, of course, would be happy to help you. Another thing that I'll point out is a question that we get quite a bit after these webinars is, where can I get the copy of the webinar? Hopefully I do a good enough job that somebody might want a copy of this webinar. So if you go into your Workamajig, and you click there and you go into open the help guide, you can actually type in webinar in the help guide. And all of the webinars that we've done will show up here. Now, of course, this one might take a few days to show up in the help guide, but you can always follow this area of the help guide. And so anytime we add a new recording of a webinar or something like that, it will ping you and let you know that you're able to go into the help guide and get that recording. So just keep that in mind, that not only will this webinar appear here in the next couple of days, but any of the previous webinars we've done, you can go and get the recording of those here. So that being said, don't forget support@workamajig.com for any more in-depth, or again, and maybe if you want to schedule a more in-depth training, you can do that, through your account manager, or if you just want to follow up on the recording of the webinar or any of our previous webinars, you can go into the help guide and find that there. So now we're going to get started on our custom dashboards here. So let me close that out right over here. So this is when I first log into Workamajig. Of course, we have, our menu items. In each and every one of our areas, we have, again, they're called graphs now, not to confuse them for the other, dashboards that we had previous to these graphs. So we'll show that in each one of our areas, we do have an area for graphs. So we can see here that we have the creative graph, we have salesperson, all the way through, billing and accounting. We have the new graph area. And each one of these areas, we've gone in and we've put in some maybe default graphs or charts that people might like to see that pertain to that area. But of course, the first question will be, how do I get that information? How do I show that information? How do I hide that information? And how do I get that set up? So the first area we're actually going to go to is our admin manager. And we're going to go to our system setup. And in our system setup, we're going into our security settings under account information. And under the security groups area here, you'd pick the security group, and we have what we call these platinum specific rights. So under the platinum specific rights, just to have the ability to view the dot that says graphs, I know this will be a little bit off here, but you will look here where it says view the new sales dashboard. That will allow you to view the sales graphs in the sales area, view the new project manager dashboard. So anything that says new and dashboard is relating to those graphs. So at the minimum, if you want to see that desktop, then you would want to give them the ability to view the new project manager dashboard or the new sales dashboard, and all the way down the line where we have these all listed here. That's just to be able to view them. When we actually go and create a graph or a chart within the dot on the desktop, we actually will be able to control at that level who can view that specific graph or chart. This is just, again, to get them to the dot on the desktop. If you would like your people to be able to create new graphs or charts within that menu item, then what we're looking for here is these graphs and charts are actually based off of custom report data sets. So you do have to have the ability to not only design custom reports, but run custom reports. These are the two security settings that we recommend people have to be able to create the new graphs or charts within, within that graph dot right there. So you would need to make sure that you have those settings. We also go one step further because, of course, there's all sorts of information in Workamajig that you probably don't need everyone to have access to. And that is, again, coming down to your customer port data sets. So remember I said that these graphs and charts are based off of customer port data sets. So when you click on the security group that you're updating and you're giving them the ability to run and design these customer ports, you also need to go over here to this pencil icon. And then this is where you would be able to see all of the different data sets that they could have access to. So you can make them visible to some, and then or some not visible. So again, depending on their role in your agency, it would depend on which data sets that you would want to give them access to. So again, if they're already in the process of creating customer ports and things like that, most likely this setup is already done. But again, if this is something new or a new role that they're going to be providing, you can certainly go through and look at this in here, and you can pick and choose which data sets that they should have access to. And of course, if you have any questions or any concerns about which data sets might show information that you don't, maybe don't want them to see, you can always email support@workamajig.com and we'll point you in the right direction or let you know again the detail that information will pull. So that is the security around being able to use this functionality. So just keep that in mind that if they don't see the dot under the Platinum specific rights, they need to be able to view the new sales dashboard, the new project manager dashboard, items like that. And of course, if you want them to set them up, they need to have the ability to design the custom reports. Okay, and then after that, they need to make sure that you have the data sets that you would like them to create these charts off of. So that's the system setup that is necessary for that to happen. Now, if you go through again, we tried to set up some default dashboards, in Workamajig just to give you an example of what they look like. So under Project Manager, you could go into PM Graphs and you might see some information in there. But of course, the big question is typically, well, I would like to create my own, and how can I do that? So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to walk you through setting up a graph. Now, you can set up a graph in any one of these graph areas, and it can have any information in it, right? So you do not have to, in the PM graph, set up specific graphs for PMs, but you probably want to because that would make more sense. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to do under accounting, and I'm going to go under accounting graphs. And currently, I don't have any graphs set up on here. So for me to get started, I do need to click on Edit. And you'll notice again now where I have here that I have my data sets that I would have access to. And we do have a shortcut. So if you know what data set you're looking for, you can certainly type it in. And I'm going to create a graph based off of my GL transaction detailed data, right? I picked that one because I know in my test site I have lots of information on that. So the first area we get to is I get to pick my graph type. We have 4 different graph types. We have a bar graph, a line graph, a pie graph, and then we have what we would call key metrics, right? So here I'm going to create and talk about each of the different settings because each of these different graphs have a slightly different setting to them. And then of course, we'll take a look at what they look like and what our features and modifications can be. So we'll start with the bar graph. And then I have an x-axis and a y-axis. So what information is going to go across the bottom and what information is going to go on the side right there. Now, when I do my x-axis right here, you'll notice again, how do I want to base this information off of? Like what am I looking for? And for this one, for today, I'm just going to say we're going to do GL account number, right? And then on my x-axis, I can select a field, and that field can be, is always going to be like numbers, dollars. Again, what are we reporting off of? And I'm just going to pick transaction amount, right? I can, do a roll-up of sum. It's very rare that I've used a different option than that, but you can average, count, max, or min. But we're going to just sum up this information here. I'll go back and I'll explain to you what series does in just a minute. And then we can sort our x-axis value or y-axis value, and then we can do an ascending or descending on that. And then, so that's just setting up again what the graph is going to look at. We're going to come back to this, I promise. But you can also set up filters, right? And just like creating custom reports in Workamajig, you can add a filter. And so let's say, now remember, this graph is going to be represented, on this desktop. So typically I would say when we're setting up our filters, maybe set up, your filters to, be fluid. And what I mean by that is, like, if I'm looking at general ledger transaction data and I say, well, I want to look for date posted, maybe I want to look at something like a year to date. So I can, instead of an equal to, or something, I can do like a year to date. So each and every time I look at this graph, like the information will update. Now you do have the ability, of course, to go in and fill out filters on each one of your graphs to have it update automatically when you're looking at it. But let's just say that I'm going to put in my, filter of year to date. And then we have these settings over here, which I can change my graph name, right? I can change the legend on where that information is going to show. I can write a description. I'm going to show you what tabs mean in just a little bit. And then you can do upper and lower targets, which will allow you to visually see if you're meeting a target that you've set. Not 100% sure if that makes sense for my GL transaction data, but again, you can set an upper or lower target. And then you can add a descriptive label to your x-axis label and your y-axis label. So if there's something that you don't like the way it's labeled, you can change that label. Right? So those are the settings in here. And also remember what I was telling you is you do have the ability to control who can access this specific graph that I'm creating. Right? So I can say, well, it's visible to these security groups. So they might have access to the dot, but I get to control here who has access to the graph itself. So then I can save my changes right here. And I do have to hit save up here. And then, oh, of course, I don't have anything available. Oh, you know why? Because let me do this. Sorry about that. My screen is blocked. I need to pick my detailed data right here. So we're going to start that one over again. Sorry about that. We're going to do it this way, and then, and so we can refresh our graph, and then it will look like this. So again, when I save my changes and I save here, you'll be able to see what it looks like right here. So that's kind of, again, I'm just looking at my GL account, right? And then the amount on that account. If I want to, sorry, my chat there is in the way. So if I want to, I can click edit and I can resize this. So if I wanted to move it around the page or change the size of this, I can certainly do that, and I can save and it will resize that graph. So I can start to stack graphs up and down. I can, move them around the page, but you always have to click edit before you have the ability to do that. Now, if I had any filters in this graph, right, I would be able to click here and make updates to those filters. So that's where I was saying that if you wanted to add a filter that you update while looking at it, you can, you would have been able to do that. Now let's make some changes to this graph that I already started right here. So I want to click on edit, and once I click on edit, then it's editable, and I click edit here. And I was telling you, what does series do? Well, again, I'm looking at my GL account number and I'm looking at my transaction amount, so it's giving me that information. But series will break it out into even further information on there. So I can click here and I can say, well, I want to look at the transaction type that was making up those numbers, and I can refresh my graph. So this is what my graph would look like now when I add a series, and you can see that blue is representing a journal entry, green is representing a payment, and orange is representing a receipt, and items like that down the line. So again, it gives me further detail on my graph, and I can save my changes, and I can save here, and again, I can look at it on my desktop. So you can see here that if I was in my settings, I had the ability, of course, to move this around on that graph. So now let's see what else I can do with this. So again, this is, again, a bar graph, and I can hover and I can see the information on here. And again, if each one of these accounts, like this one right here, represents, again, that I have a payment and I have a receipt that make up the number right in here. So let me click on edit and then edit this again. And you can see again that I chose to do a bar graph. And let's take a look at what some of the other ones look like right here. So when I do bar graph, I can change this to a line graph. And I still have the same selections on line graph, but I can refresh my graph, and this is kind of what it would look like. So this is better used, of course, if you have like a kind of a set number and you want to see, if you're going over and under. So really good, again, like if you wanted to put in those target values and take a look at a line. Another option here, and again, we do a pie graph. Now I have some less options here when I do the pie graph, but with this pie graph, this is what it would look like, right? So this is, again, how my pie graph would look, and you can go through each and every one of these and take a look and see, again, what your, which one you think would work best for the information that you have here. Now I'm just going to, and of course, again, if I don't like that, I don't like the GL account number, of course, I can always change and, put this information in here, refresh my graph, and hit save my changes, and don't forget to save here. Right, so then I have, this is, the graph that I have on my page. And that's pretty much how, those are the three most common graphs that you can create. So let's just say I wanted to create another one. So this is fantastic. This is what I was looking for. I can click edit, and you'll notice the minute I hit edit, I get new. And then I can pick, and I'm gonna, pick my same information. This time I'm gonna pick the right one, but I'll pick my GL transaction detailed data. And then I can come in here, and let's say the one we did not talk about was our key metrics. Now, key metrics are pretty basic, right? So I pick key metrics, and it says add a metric, right? So I'm gonna add a metric, and I'm just going to say, again, do my transaction amount. But this time, I am going to go and add some filters. And I'm going to add a filter, and I am going to say like date posted is year to date, right? And then I'm also going to insert another one, and I'm going to say that my account type is equal to, let's say, income. So go there. And again, under your settings, you can name your graph, and we can, right? And then I can save my changes, and then I have to hit save before I see any results. And pretty much this is, what a key metrics will do, right? There is the ability to go in some more advanced options. Of course, you can always work with your account manager on that to make some more calculated, things. So I created a pretty simple key metric, but if you wanted to see your revenue year to date, if I wanted to do a cost of goods sold year to date or anything like that, again, it's just summing up and adding up a number for you. So that is how you would go in and you can create those graphs. And again, I'm creating these graphs on the accounting. You can create, again, different graphs and different charts on any one of the different dashboards right there. Now, one other thing that I promised you I'd come back to is when I click on edit right here, and I go into edit here, and under settings, we talked about tab name. So what tab name allows you to do is it allows you to have pretty much different dashboards of graphs within this one accounting graph dot, right? And it's as simple as you typing in a tab name, saving your changes, and saving here. And you'll notice now that I have this little like hamburger icon right here. And really what that does is it says, okay, well, here's this graph, and then I can go to my page one. So graphs is the home page, page one is the next page. So it's as simple as that. Every single graph you create, if you update the tab name to say page one, then they'll fall on the page with this one. If you leave the tab name blank, then it will then fall on the default page, which is your graphs page right there. So that is pretty much how we work with these custom dashboards. Again, there probably are some tricks that you can do, some fancy calculations that you can get into on these dashboards, but that is the basic of how you would go and set those up. So if there are any questions, you can type them into the chat. I'll stay on the line for just a little bit more. And if not, again, if your questions are more involved or you want to get, some more information on that, you can always set up a training call with your account manager. Thank you guys. Have a great day.